Hey everyone, we're just jumping on. We are recording Wednesday afternoon, the 4th of February. Yesterday, interest rates increased. Overnight as well, there was some chatter coming out of Canberra with some anonymous sources saying that CGT discounting may be on the chopping block for investment properties in the May budget. John texted me this morning and said, hey, do you want to do a talk about interest rates on the show today, because we record on Wednesdays? And I said, well, let's just do a 15-minute little update.
Yep.
And we'll get out this afternoon.
Opinion piece?
Opinion piece, if you will.
Yes.
We've both got opinions, don't we?
We have.
So before I throw to you, John, yesterday, if you haven't heard, the official cash rate was increased to 3.85% by 25 basis points, if you want to be elite and say basis points, or 0.25%. That will basically, I've got emails from my banks already, and they'll be effective pretty soon. If you are watching on YouTube, we'll put up on the screen what it means for you with some standard mortgages from $450 up to $1 million. For example, if you've got a $700K mortgage, you're probably looking at extra $25, $26 a week. If you're listening to the podcast, there's a thing on our Instagram with that, and it is probably worth also saying if you've got savings, you will probably receive more of a interest rate from your savings account at some point. Banks and institutions aren't usually too fast to pass that on the other way.
That'll come secondary, won't it?
Yeah, so I think I want to say to you, John Pigeon, and if you're new here, John hosts the This Is Property podcast. What did you want to talk about specifically, or did you want to, I don't know, run a few things up the flagpole? What are you seeing out there in property land with home buyers and investors?
Depends on which side of the fence you're on. If you're a baby boomer that's got no mortgage and have a lot of cash in the bank, then you've had a win yesterday. If you're a mortgage holder or someone that's looking to get into a mortgage for the first time, or investors, then you've taken a little bit of a hit. And I suppose from an educational point of view, where we're saying, well, we should be forecasting this into our life. We should know that we're always working sort of one or two interest rate rises above, so that we're never caught with our pants down, right? We've always got our emergency funds. We've always know our cash flow management plan, and we've got the ability to pivot. Yes, it's not ideal for us in our personal situation to have increased costs in our life, but it is what it is. We probably saw it coming. It wasn't a big shock to the world that it happened yesterday. And I think May is when they meet again. There will be no surprise if there's another rate rise again then.
Yeah, and part of the, I guess, media pack that was given, I had a quick look before we hit record, and again, if you are watching on YouTube, sorry that we're both wearing shorts and you can see our white legs in some of the shots, but I didn't plan to do this little episode today. And
already dressed when the statement came through.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've actually used this studio myself.
There you go.
So, I think it's quite clear that the board are looking at data through and projections from now until the end of the year, where inflation will not come off again until end of the year, which means there probably will be another rise at some point in the new year, in this year. It's also important to say, I want everyone to just zoom out and have a look. We are still relatively in low interest rate times, which doesn't help if you don't have a spare $30 a week.
Yeah.
But zoom out and just really look at what you can control.
Yeah, you would probably say anywhere from 6 to 7 is about 6-7, about normal, right? Over the journey, wouldn't you? And
you've got teen kids, don't you?
I do, and they'd be cringing if they ever tuned in. But ever since I've started investing, I don't think I've seen anything too much above 7. But yeah, it always, the conversation with the baby boomers around this time is, oh, but I went through 17%, you'll be fine, sort of thing. You're right, it's all personal, and it's like, well, I've either got the money or I haven't. But I think the message out there for those that want to invest or buy your own home is forecast these little things into our life, regardless of what the buyer sentiment is or what the government's saying or what the media's saying. We've just got to factor these little increases into our life.
And I think it's important, just as a 101 explainer, like if you're new to this money world and you're like, well, how does it all work? If I was trying to explain this to a 10-year-old, I don't have nieces or nephews that are 10, but whatever. What effectively happens is if the economy is potentially moving too fast, AKA lots of spending, inflation is the actual killer, right? The Reserve Bank of Australia really has, when they consider the monetary policy, they've really got one lever that they can pull, and that is to increase interest rates, which effectively means if there is spending going on in the economy and everything's moving fast, we can slow it down, because if we increase interest rates, people won't be spending as much. Like,
okay, can I just go there?
You can. Can I finish my little...
You finish there and we'll go back to there.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds right now for the sake of time and the niche geekiness of this, but there will be people jumping through the screen talking about government spending into the economy that causes the inflation, which then causes the interest rates to increase. But conceptually, if you are a new listener to the money world, I just want you to understand from this episode today, things really, really fast need to slow down. One lever that we have is putting the brakes on, which is interest rate increase. Now, the other way, remember when COVID happened and there was fear and no one was spending and it was scary and things weren't moving along? We decrease the official cash rate. So we're not spending as much on our debt, which means we've got more money to spend out there. But there are other layers like business confidence and, as I said, government spending and whatnot. But I just want people to understand that's kind of what's going on at a real basic level.
Yeah, no,
now,
it's a good analogy.
And then before I throw to you, because I will go back to your point, the Reserve Bank of Australia is an independent board or body set up, and the Monetary Board has 9 people, and they meet 8 times a year, and they look at all the data. And we'll put some things on the screen at the moment about the press release from yesterday, and you can have a read of that. One of the things, today's policy decision was unanimous. So the 9 different people in the board meeting agreed that rates would need to increase. A couple of things as well. In recent times, it has changed where the governor or the chair, Michelle Bullock, she's now doing a press conference after the decision on the Tuesday. So there's a little bit more visibility there. But for the sake of time, I was going to look into the weeds at whatever. But if you are wanting to geek out, the media release, I've got it here. It pretty much says everything. But yeah, so before we go to the CGT stuff, when I said around that, we increase rates, so I'm spending less on my Guzman Gomez meal, which is going to bring everything down. What did you want to jump in with that?
Yeah, so first of all, our inflation is higher than most other countries right now.
Yep.
So if we're looking to opinions and thoughts, I think we went back. If we go back to COVID, you mentioned we had so many rate cuts. I think we went too far with that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not an economist, or I'm just here a bloke with an opinion. But I think we went too far, which means we've now got to come back the other way.
Yeah.
No one else in the world's doing that right now. Yeah. So maybe that's questionable.
And we will say that the target band for inflation with the Reserve Bank of Australia is around that 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
And at the moment it's 3.8% from the end of last year.
It's too high. And there's talk that may take 18 months to bring back. Yeah. And the thing I don't get with inflation is just what's taken into account and what isn't.
Yeah.
Because we've got house growth that's out of control at the moment. That's has
they
some
look,
impact.
they actually, when you look at headline inflation and they've got all these different baskets of inflation,
Yes.
they will strip out the noise.
Yeah, but I'm not
Like
sure
if-
that's been stripped out of this, the house growth, because when you strip that back, you say, well, house growth's been, I don't know, let's say 8% this year, last year, as an average. That's not the individual householder's fault, is it?
No.
They haven't gone and spent money. It's just a case of lack of supply, which ultimately comes back to the government. But where I was going when you were sort of giving that analysis was inflation or putting up interest rates is hurting the person with the mortgage.
That's right. And that's
Right.
the whole problem with this whole thing.
So 30% of owner-occupiers in Australia, give or take, have no mortgage.
Yeah.
So they're waking up today winning, still spending money, arguably not doing anything for the curbing of inflation. So they get away scot-free. If they're the majority spending the money in the country right now, we're affecting the wrong person.
Yeah, but that whole thing is cooked every way you look at it in every area. So let's have a look, for example, income tax. 55% of revenue into the government is from income tax.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who aren't generating income tax. So again, this middle band of Australia who are working
Gets hit.
with a mortgage, that middle band, we're getting totally screwed.
On both sides, because you see that not only are they getting hit and these people aren't, let's call them baby boomers for now, right? The baby boomers are just away scot-free, haven't been hit by yesterday's announcement. They keep spending, living their life as normal. But also their majority of home ownership as well. So what's happening to house prices going ahead? Those that can't get into the market, they're falling behind. So there's this massive divide that's yesterday's movement, yesterday's decision has actually created a massive divide once more.
Yeah, and that's the whole cooked part. You've got the mules of the government's income, 55% of people paying income tax, the mules.
Yeah.
And a lot of us mules are the ones going through that high mortgage, high expenses, kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's cooked.
It is. And you don't,
So this is, okay, so
it annoys the hell out of me,
as
to be
much as I'm
honest.
not
Like,
prepared for this episode, this is not a bit of a, I always thought it's like, oh, let's talk about the rates. You just want to come on and say the whole system's cooked,
rant.
regardless of what happened yesterday.
Correct.
Okay, sure.
It's just fortunate if you were born in 1950s, 60s, you're cleaning up right now.
Yeah. And that's it. I think, and it probably does go to a segue to some structural things, particularly around this CGT. But yeah, I would just encourage anyone, if you do have a mortgage and you haven't had it reviewed in some time, go back to your mortgage broker. If you have a mortgage broker, hopefully they've reached out to you each year at a minimum to say, look, we've run the flag up the pole. A week ago, we were probably saying most mortgages probably needed a 5 in front of them. In this area or this climate, we're probably going to be clipping now early 6s anyway.
Yeah, so interest only generally would have a 6 in front of it for investment.
Yeah, but I'm talking primarily home owners.
Owner-occs.
Yeah.
Getting close. I reckon you could still get a 5.
Yes. Yeah. But
Something.
more people are going to be tipping into that 6 now.
They should be factoring
Like
in.
the examples that I use, and we'll put them on the screen, was a 5.8% percent home loan tipping over to 605.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's funny. I know we're strapped for time, but
Yeah,
I
hurry up.
accidentally jumped on a current affair last night, and there was a small business owner with a live recording of what the rates were going to do. Right. And of course, they went up and they've gone up by 0.25, which is a standard increase. But the young lady on the show was like, 0.25. Wow, I didn't know it was going to be that high. I'm like, love, that's really the only increase. Like, it's not 0.1.
Yeah, well, sending my regards for you for having to watch Current Affair.
Yeah, it was accidental. So I did premise that.
It's not the worst show on the planet.
It is, but I was actually, I was forced to.
But anyway, all that to say, we hear you around interest rates. It is what it is. You just got to control what you can control.
Yes.
And that is just paying more attention to more things. Even, for example, the other day, and I say this as a guy who doesn't really pay much attention to the details in my day-to-day spending, I needed to fill up the Ranger. It was diesel. If I remember, or if I'm just not like, I'll open the fuel app. So there was a 7-Eleven down at Wickham or Carrington down here.
Yeah.
That was cheaper than by far. Anyway, so I did the numbers based on the litres in the Ranger. Just by planning and having a look and driving literally an extra 1 kilometre, I save like $15.
Yeah.
Just by paying a bit more attention. So that's all we're saying. You have to pay a little bit more attention in this area. And if I did that twice, if I paid attention just on my fuel twice a month.
Yes. There's the rate rise.
There's the rate rise kind of covered.
Yeah.
So
no, you're right.
it is tough out there. And I will acknowledge there are people that have savings accounts. You're going to get a bit of an increase. The figures that we had, I did it based on a yearly because it doesn't move the needle too much. But basically, if you had 40 grand saved, you're going to get an extra $100 a year in interest.
And just for a word of inspiration before we go to the CGT bit, we shouldn't, if we're intending to go and buy a home, that still should be our aim. We might just have to change the goalpost slightly.
Yeah.
But don't lose motivation and incentive to go and do what you're
And
going
I
to do.
know it's hard, and I know people are going to be offended at me. That's fine. You can be. Try as hard as you can not to be a victim of external circumstances. And I know that sometimes external circumstances cause actual grief and issues, but I'm just saying like, oh, I can't, I don't want to get a mortgage because interest rates keep going up.
Yeah.
No. You want to get a home, let's put a plan in place.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't start a business because interest rates are going to go up. And no. There's businesses that have been running in high interest rates and low interest rates.
Internally, that's what you want to do.
Now, I do have all the sympathy in the world for every small business owner who are like, any cafe or hospitality place on the planet. I've got a lot of sympathy because there's such bigger issues. And to be honest, it comes back to energy prices and rent. But anyway, we'll be back right after this, and we'll talk about this CGT leak that came out of Canberra yesterday right after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. But if you want guidance tailored to your situation, head to moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help. We'll connect you with one of our trusted professionals, financial advisors and mortgage brokers, who work with people right across Australia. No matter where you are, they can help. Now, before we get back to the show, a quick reminder to protect your financial life. That means having income protection sorted. It means having death cover if there's any debt or dependents relying on you. It means getting your personal insurance in order. Most people insure their car, they insure their house, but what about themselves? Sky Wealth, who support this podcast, are specialist financial advisors who can help you get the right cover in place. Their advice is often more comprehensive and better value than going direct through your super. Book a complimentary 15-minute chat at sky.com.au. That's skye.com.au. And they'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, so last night, I got a buzz on my thing from the AFR.
Being your phone.
My phone, yeah, the AFR app. Full disclosure, I pay for the AFR app. They've run ads on this show before. Phil Coorey, Labor considers changing to CGT discount. Labor considers changes to CG discount as reform budget looms. The government is considering scaling back the 50% capital gains discount for property investors as it prepares for what Anthony Sean, can you just come back in? As it prepares for what Anthony Albanese says will be a significant budget reform in May. With economists, the Greens, unions and some independents and welfare groups all supporting paring back the Howard-era tax break, the government is leaving the door open to revisiting a policy idea it last took the 2019 election. That election, when Bill Shorten was running, that's my running joke on the podcast when people talk about negative gearing and CGT and franking credits, I say, ask Bill Shorten how that went. But to be fair, we're in a new world, John, and the Labor government have a huge mandate and have probably got some political capital that they can literally blow and use to get this over the line. Like, let's be very clear and serious here. Before I throw to you, I just want to read a couple of things. At the end of last year, Stephen Kennedy, who is the Treasury Secretary, right, runs Treasury, he said curbing the capital gains tax deductions for investors would have more impact on lowering house prices than changes to negative gearing, but neither would help boost supply, which is the key challenge. So at the time in November last year, he made those comments to, I think, a Senate committee, basically saying it wouldn't move the needle as much as negative gearing. But at the end of the day, supply is the issue. And I'll just read some quotes while you gather your thoughts from the article that Philip Curry wrote. Just as a background information, peeps, these changes around the 50% negative gearing discount were basically put in place to offset the cause of inflation. Now, Philip Curry goes on in his article, the 50% reduction replaces the less generous Keating-era capital gains discount, which had been in place since 1985, which is based on the cumulative increase in inflation over the life of the asset. Assuming the average inflation rate of 2.5%, an asset would need to be held for 16 years before the owner experienced a 50% increase in consumer prices. However, the average policy is held for 9 years, according to CoreLogic. Labor went to the 2016 and 2019 elections promising to pare back the capital gains discount to 20% and place limits on negative gearing. Neither of the proposals were retrospective. It's important to note the Greens Treasury spokesman Nick McKim is leading a Senate inquiry into the CGT discount and told the AFR that, depending on the outcome, the Greens may support winding it back for property only, not to stymie investment into other classes. That was always my thing. It's like, well, if we're going to dick around with it, just carve off property, because that's where the main issues are. Respected economists Saul Eastlake and Richard Holden agree that there was a case to consider changing the tax break only for housing. They said it was even an argument to pare back only the gain for existing housing, as that's where most property investment was targeted, and to leave it at 50% for new houses to encourage supply. Eastlake said the 25% formerly proposed by Labor was too low and it would be overtaken quickly by inflation. You remember the Treasury review, I think around 2010s with Ken Henry. Former Treasury Secretary Ken Henry has long advocated for a 33% rate of capital gains discount. And just finally, Chalmers' comments, who had Treasury examine modifying the CGT deduction in late 2024, as we alluded to. Chalmers, who had Treasury examine modifying the CGT deduction in late 2024, alluded in a recent interview that with economist Joseph Stiglitz for the Monthly magazine. In a repeat of comments he made after last year's economic roundtable, the Treasurer said he was open to tax reforms and addressed that intergenerational unfairness was driven by the property market. And this is a quote: "As we think about what tax reform might come next, we'll be guided by this idea of intergenerational fairness, especially for working people," he said. Chalmers said the cost of housing was a defining part of this intergenerational challenge. While we've had a substantial tax agenda, We know that people would like us to do more. From my point of view, I think there is more to do on tax reform, and will be guided by those principles. I think basically Albo is saying we don't want to touch the family home and we don't want to send bad vibes that we're against aspiration. But look, if you want to jump on the AFR, I've just read a heap of the comments by Philip Curry because it was just so succinct. But all that to say, John, we know it's about supply, whatever way you cut it. Like this housing crisis.
Yeah.
Look at rents, look at purchase prices.
Yeah, so, and I'll go to something else that was in the Fin Review late last night as well. It's been released by the Queensland government, which I think's a hell of a lot smarter. This is, well, number one, it's a leak. Whether it's a real deal, don't know. If it comes through...
Oh, it would be real. Don't worry about that.
When it comes through, is it going to be passed? That's the next thing. Greens are maybe in favour of it. Is it going to fix supply and demand? No. For the poor old tenant, they're going to get left in the lurch as well because they're at the end of the chain and less investors around, less houses to rent, right? So rents are going to increase and the journey continues. So do I like it? No. Am I one of those that would be affected potentially if it's not retrospect? So I don't, like they tried in 16 and 19, 2016, 2019, and it didn't come to fruition.
But it was a different political landscape.
Different landscape, I get that.
Yeah.
But they also, like, if their sole objective is to increase supply, not going to happen.
You know what? I've literally just thought this. We know it's been part of the Labor vibe to make a change like this. Do you think with all the turmoil that's going on with the coalition, they're like, let's have a run at this now?
Well, we've got the numbers.
Well, not only the numbers, I'm talking about the opposition in turmoil to put together a campaign to really shoot it down.
So,
because I think, like, my own view is, I'm not impacted. Sure, if that's, I own properties.
you are as an investor.
Sure, let me rephrase that. I'm on paper impacted if I sell investment properties, if they implement this and look back, which I don't think they're talking about doing. I think it's going forward. However, if that was the case, I'm going to be okay.
But when are they going to wake up and realise that it's not investors that are pushing the house prices?
Because attacking the rich and investors is what sells attention.
Okay, so attack the rich, you go for the home own as well as the investment, which they haven't got the courage to do.
Because if Albo or the Prime Minister of the day came out and said, oh, we're going to dick around with taxing gains on your family home, good luck with his job the next minute.
I know. But imagine if you not necessarily put a capital gains tax on it, but imagine you put some sort of land tax on home ownership. How that would change the landscape of housing dramatically.
But this whole thing, like, as I said, I do not, like, if they're like, oh, do we want to mess around with CGT discounts for property? Sure, give it a try. I'm going to be fine. However, every way you look at it with everything, it all goes back to supply. And even Claire O'Neill said that when I was at the budget thing last year in the roundtable. It's on the recording. It was public. She didn't want to go off the record. Housing Ministry saying this is broadly a supply issue. So I think the vibe is changing a little bit, where I think people in the right office are actually saying, yeah, it's a supply thing.
Yeah, but they're moronic to think that this is going to change the supply.
Yeah, but you've got to also remember that this might be a measure not to necessarily fix housing prices, but to just get more money in the government coffers for Chalmers' budget.
Of course it is. And to keep everyone happy.
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to change the supply thing. What may change the supply is this, Glenn. Now, I'm not political. I don't care who's in power, what sort of do.
Well, you should.
Well, I don't really just live and breathe politics, right? Developers are being asked to name state-owned land in Queensland they want to buy, with social and affordable housing mandates scrapped under the government plans to turbocharge the supply of new homes. Now, the government's not afraid, this is the Queensland government, to partner with the private sector to help achieve a goal of 1 million homes by 2044 under new activation land plan. If you know of state land that's sitting idle and unutilised, you can now go to the Economic Development Queensland under this policy and put in an unsolicited proposal to develop that land. That's smart. There's land, like there's 6.5 hectares in Banyo in
So is
Brisbane.
that land that the state government own or Crown
State government
land?
or Crown. Like they're talking, Energex depot in Banyo, right? Been vacant since 2016.
Yeah.
There's 6.5 hectares.
It is funny that, because of all the hoo-ha that you see at a federal level with housing, it's actually also a state problem.
Well, they own a lot of it, and it's not being used.
Yeah.
Carve it up into.
No, but what I'm saying is you've got all this federal stuff going on with housing prices and the politicking around it, where it's all a state issue, because the states are the ones that do land releases. The states are the ones that do all the approvals.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's like it's a collective as an Australian government to say.
Didn't South Australia or the federal government commission the South Australian government to build off the brand new homes just for first home buyers?
They've got incentives for that to happen.
Yeah, I think I saw something flash up. I didn't read it, but
yeah,
and I think it was a Claire O'Neill tweet or whatever.
Yeah,
and I will I know
they've all
that
got incentives. Every state's got their new home incentive.
And now that the year's back underway, if any of the team at Claire's office, I know you're in my phone somewhere, but if you are watching this, reach back out, because we'll try and I've always meant to get Claire on, but I kind of had a bit of a view where I don't really want to do politicians on the show running up to an election campaign, because I don't know, I just don't think it's like,
tacky.
I'm not good enough to interview someone to really get the nuance out of them. But if it's outside of an election campaign, come on and we'll talk housing, or
bring them on the property show. We'll have a nice.
All right, we'll do that. Yeah,
yarn.
I'll get Claire O'Neill. I'll reach out, or if I think it's Stephen in her office, someone. Let's get Claire on the property show. You can interview her, maybe with me, and then we'll play it on the main show as well. But anyway, I don't know. I just think we'll finish for this 15-minute chat now that's at 30 minutes. Do you want to do any final comments on either of the things?
I just shake my head at what decisions are being made. And as I said, I'm not in government, not that interested in politics, but you look at these decisions, like logically speaking, I'm not the smartest bloke going around, but I'm thinking logically, how is that going to change something? So the interest rate rise, did it have to happen? Yes. Is it going to make a difference to what they're actually trying to do? No.
Well, the interest rate thing, there is a part where we can't F it up this time like they did under Philip Lowe's leadership, where they're like, hey everyone, we're going to be low interest rates for 2 years, pew, 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 and next minute we got the ratchet up.
But you're penalising the wrong third or the wrong 2/3 of the community.
Yeah, and that's the question. How do you curb inflation without impacting that middle band?
No, they've only got one lever.
Well, I think the government spending does enter the chat.
Government spending is partly, if not majorly, responsible for this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the dance of spending too much money, inflating the economy, all that, versus not spending any money and society doesn't have the benefits of government spending money. Like this is a seesaw period, and
I did 2 minutes of research today, and like we're paying something like 28 million a day in interest.
Yeah, but you can't, with the interest stuff, I actually want to do an economics course.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to get into the weeds of it.
Yeah, you should.
You can't necessarily look at that when politicians go, oh, this government, imagine if you ran your house at a deficit. It's like, calm down. We need deficits, and you've got to step back and look at the debt to GDP.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
But our GDP is low.
Yeah, but also our debt to GDP is worldwide low as well. So we don't have a huge problem. Yes, millions of dollars a day in interest. Yeah, sure. That's a lot of money. But if you zoom out and have a look at overall debt to GDP.
Yeah.
But anyway, and there's going to be people in the YouTube comments that are like, oh, you're a spokesperson for the Communist Party, you're a spokesperson for the Labour Party, you're a spokesperson for the Greens, you're the spokesperson for One Nation. I'll probably never do that. If they pay me. No, I'm joking. Oh, you're a spokesperson for this and that.
You're just a person.
In this chat, I'm not a spokesperson for any government. Full disclosure, I ran some ads on Instagram about the first home buying schemes for the federal government. That campaign is over. This is Glenny Boy. We are not talking politics here. I know they entered the chat.
Well, they had to enter the chat because
but you
of those
can
changes.
vote for whoever you want. I don't mind. So can you, John.
Can't care less.
As long as it's the CCP.
All right, well, we had a good, bit of an opinion piece today, wasn't it?
Yeah,
More
and
so than
given
anything.
that 15-minute chat went for that long, we'll only record one episode today, or we'll have a look at the diary and maybe come back next week. But hey, thanks so much for listening and watching. Remember, just control what you can control. That will remove the most anxiety in your financial life. Do a Venn diagram of everything that overlaps and just put in the middle what I can control.
Totally. That's the most worked up I'll ever get about both of those topics.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Sorry about the white legs on YouTube, but it's been interesting, John, filming.
Might provide some comments.
Well, yeah, in this new studio that we have got. And I'll just say as well, a bit of housekeeping. Monday's show with Rach and I, with the shotgun mics, we weren't happy with that audio. The next 2 Tuesday shows, we're using lapels, not going to be that amazing. We're actually going back to a condenser microphone. Just a bit of an update. So thank you for your grace and patience while we try and experiment in real time with our audio gear, just to try and make things as good as possible. My name is Glenn James. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive Pty Ltd, the publisher of this podcast, and Glenn James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds financial services license 451289. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the host or the publisher or their respective license holders.